Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in data about Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 24 of 2025, and I am so happy to be back here again today talking about Weekly Shonen Jump, of course, because hey, last week in Japan, or I don't know if it was last week or the week before, I honestly don't quite know all my Japanese lore as good as I should. I also probably am putting myself directly into a camp of looking like an absolute moron, calling it Japanese lore, but hey, I played a lot of video games when I was younger. I read a lot of manga. I mean, today we're covering 15 series, but either way, getting back to the point, of course, last week was Golden Week in Japan, so we had a break issue because of that. Not that I'm complaining or anything, because, it is nice sometimes, take a break and be like, alright, we don't have Weekly Shonen Jump video this week. I'm sort of happy about that, but, of course, we are coming back this week with full force. Of course, we have 15 different series that I read in Weekly Shonen Jump this week to talk about, and we have a lot of really interesting manga that I honestly just want to talk about. Some of them I don't have a lot of thoughts on, others I do, and of course, if you guys don't know how this series works here on the channel, of course, I'm going to be sitting down through here reading rambling about, I've already read all of these series, I'm going to be sitting down and rambling about all 15 of these series in Weekly Shonen Jump, and then ranking them from what I thought was the best chapter of the week, all the way down to the worst chapter of the week, and all of the other 13 series in between. I will also, of course, be picking my favorite character of the week as well. And yeah, that's how we do this show here, and I guess I should also mention that this week we have a few things shaking up in the various, hey, here are all the series that are in Weekly Shonen Jump. Of course, we got a brand new series this week, of course, by Yuki Kawaguchi, who in the past wrote the Hunters Guild Red Hood, which, of course, was a manga. It was actually one of the first manga that I was sort of, on the ball reading in Jump. I mean, if we come back over here to Weekly Shonen Jump 2021, you can see right over here, I'd only been ranking manga for 5 weeks before, hey, look at that, the Hunters Guild Red Hood started, and of course, it ran for all of, 18 or so chapters, and then it got canceled along with Neru Way of the Martial Artist. And honestly, it's really funny that out of both of those two series, Red Hood is going to be remembered so much more for being a work of Kawaguchi than Neru Way of the Martial Artist will be. And I really remember at the time liking Neru a whole lot more than Hunters Guild Red Hood, but at the end of the day, we're just talking about canceled Shonen Jump manga right now, but of course, Yuki Kawaguchi is back with a brand new manga called Order of the Flame. We've got a main character named Order, and of course, we'll be talking about all this whenever we talk about this series. You know what? Let me just go and talk about it now. Yeah, honestly, why not? I guess we're just going to skip all the way down to, I think, what was going to be the middle of the episode right now. But honestly, I just want to talk about the series of Order of the Flame. So this is a very interesting series going back to Norse mythology, and I will say Norse mythology is not something that I'm very well versed in, so for that reason, there are going to be a lot of ideas that sort of fly over my head here, and also what sort of makes me a little interested about this is we had a series called Icehead Gill. What was that? Was that 2023, if I'm not mistaken? Let me go and run through all the various stuff here. Yeah, Icehead Gill was issue number, I did not write my issue numbers at the top of the page in 2023, but yeah, Icehead Gill, and it was the same thing of a world completely frozen over, and a whole bunch of Norse ideals, and really our main character in Order of the Flame is this young boy named Order. We learn that he is a cisterna, and he pretty much lives in a village, and as this sort of chapter goes and progresses, we learn that he is joining some sort of brigading army of some type, right? And a lot of the warriors in this army are very much reminiscent of what I sort of call back to an elusive samurai thing. Of course, I'm sure this has been held in plenty of other manga before, but of course, I am a newer generation of a manga reader, and granted, I should not say that because as far as a lot of people say about manga, oh, this is a new gen manga, I normally cut that off at about 4 years, so I no longer believe that a manga is new gen after 4 years. So, of course, any of the series that start up in 2021, if I'm going to sit down here, yeah, Hunters Guild Red Hood is barely a new gen because it was published what was that, 3 years and 11 months ago, pretty much? So it's almost out of that clarification for that I at least know as, hey, this is what a new gen manga is, this is what one isn't. Witch Watch and Elusive Samurai, I don't believe are new gen manga anymore. And of course, I've been reading manga since about the end of 2019, or no, it was the end of 2020 whenever I first started reading manga week to week, and then it was earlier in that year of 2020 when I sort of started reading it after, of course, being introduced to Bleach in 2018. So a little bit of, like, my manga history there. Not to say that I am a new-gen manga reader, but I am not a manga reader who's been very well-versed in all of the various stories out there. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I keep up with a lot of way newer series just because that's where I view a lot of the hype in, and the fun is, like, reading manga week to week, catching up, seeing how these stories evolve over time, then really getting into that whole idea of, like, okay, knowing, like, to be real with you guys, I have never seen any Dragon Ball, never even read a piece of it. Like, I know a lot of it by just, like, osmosis, but I have never sat down and actually checked out Dragon Ball for myself. Do I need to fix that? Absolutely. But it's sort of just, like, something that it's not sort of firing in the back of my brain whenever I talk about these things, right? To get to that, back to my original point, Order pretty much joins this sort of, like, order, I guess you could say, of these knights who are very, like, bloodthirsty and all of this, going around like, oh, we're going to die and then all go to Valhalla, right? It's this very big idea of, like, hey, they want to be able to die a noble death. So pretty much the way this chapter sort of goes on is, like, there's some apprehension for Order to go and actually sort of join up with all of these people. We learned that his dad was also a warrior who died a very long time ago, pretty much leaving him and his sister orphaned, as far as we can tell. There may be a mother in the picture, we're not really so sure, but really the whole crux of this chapter is eventually he goes and becomes a sort of like a cook here at this base. Let me find the exact term here in the chapter. His sister calls it going to the fortress, so that's what she specifically calls it, but he is going there to be a cook, right? He will not be a warrior, but he will be the one going around and in this frozen world, going and keeping all of the fires lit and pretty much warming up mead for all the actual warriors who are going on out there, right? Well, eventually he goes out there, a lot of people in his town really just love him, and they really just, like, treat him very well, and his sister on this way out pretty much gives him this, like, almost, like, burning flame of the town. Is pretty much like a goodwill to give order as he's getting ready to leave, right? Well, he eventually gets over to this fortress where we really get introduced to who seems to be our main female lead in the series. Really reminds me of, in Hunter's Guild Red Hood, the main female hunter in that series. Oh gosh, I read this series like 4 years ago. I do not remember what the lead's name was. Was it Grimm or something like that? Either way, this is a very big, large, racked woman, pretty much, right? Something that Yuki Kawaguchi is very prominent in drawing. I think even today, while I'm recording this, it was either the Viz account or the Weekly Shonen Jump English account came out and really just said, like, hey, a lot of you have been calling this person a muscle mommy. That's very interesting. So yeah, people are going to be how people are going to be. I never read this chapter. I was like, oh man, that's so cool, right? But as we will eventually learn, her name is Alajoki here in this moment. And I really love this sort of moment that she has. This pretty much Order comes over and blows onto this flame in a corner. And she's pretty much like, hey, what are you doing there? And Order just like, oh, I felt like breathing on it. It makes the fire last longer, right? And she's like, oh, is that some, like, a good luck spell or something? But, like, hey, still, be careful about that. And she sort of goes into this, like, folklore idea of, like, hey, your breath is a part of the soul. And, I mean, that's why they say, like, your chest hurts whenever you run. Honestly, it seems like something that the Norse may have, like, had in their mythology of some kind, right? But eventually, her name is what? Alajoki again? Yes, Alajoki. Pretty much it says, like, hey, that's what a shaman told me once, though. But in any case, they say breath has some magical significance to it. The fire may be lasting longer because it's swallowing up some of your life. Don't let it swallow up and kill you, pretty much, right? And I really love this idea of, like, hey, spending your breath here in this moment shortens your life to keep the fires and everybody else going. I really sort of do like how this is sort of being, like, recontextualized almost, right? But pretty much Order asked Alajoki for a sword. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give one to you. And he's like, okay, I guess I am just a cook. And as he sort of goes to do some cook's duties, oh no, the Ice Kingdom is attacking, right? And oh no, it's this massive siege. People are coming through, getting beaten and bloodied left and right. There's like this big two-headed Yeti that comes over, sort of picks up Order, and goes and just like crushes a lot of these fires here in the area. And we see that Alajoki comes over and ends up saving Order here in this moment, pretty much telling her, like, hey, run, get out of here, pretty much, right? And we see that she is stuck frozen in ice trying to protect Order, right? And Order is really just freaking out, like, oh no, am I going to die here? Like, this isn't good. And he sort of remembers all of these things about his father and his sister, and like, I feel like I still have more to do here, and if I die, I can give coins to my sister in my death, right? Because, of course, like, she'll be compensated for this. So he's like, and that would give her food. So, like, do I just die here in the moment right now? And we pretty much see it like, oh no, this army isn't doing good whatsoever. Like, they've been completely wiped out by the Ice Kingdom. And the leader of this Ice Kingdom, who seems to sort of look like this elf guy, I mean, he's got these, like, very pointed ears, but he also seems to have horns like a demon, comes over and just sees that Order is, like, one of the very last people surviving here in the area. And he sort of looks over and he's like, boy, like, what are you doing over there, right? As we see that Order is sort of huddled over this last remnant of a flame, breathing life into it. And we even see, like, yeah, Order has burned all of his clothes, all the things keeping him warm in this world of ice, pretty much here. Like, yeah, he is almost sacrificing everything to keep this flame going. And Order even says, like, hey, as long as I have fire, I can melt everyone, and I won't let anyone else die. Really showing this awesome conviction that we get here, right? And he's like, hey, this is my battle, this is for me to do. And this sort of crab monstrosity ice thing comes over, tries to go through and harm Order. And Order just sort of thinks like, hey, holy flame, I'll give you both my body and my soul. Just warm everybody else's body for me. As he just thinks like, hey, burn bright and the spirits may protect you. As here in the moment, Order just breathes life to this fire. And then the fire almost comes to life in a sword in Order's hand. And Order sort of just comes through, absolutely wrecks all of these various people in this really awesome panel where, like, his hands are almost burning from holding this fiery sword here in a moment. Like, really, what's the few things that is keeping him alive? And then this fire sword just sort of comes over, talks to him, and we learn that this is something called a fire spirit, pretty much, right? And it's like, hey, it's got a little bit of a sentience to it. It's just like, hey, thanks for sharing some life force with me. Goes over and clads Order in sort of like this gear of some sort. And just is like, hey, you're a warrior, which means your duty is to what? Fight some of those people. And again, it says like, hey, thank you for giving me some of your life. Pretty much goes through, Order wrecks the entire Ice Kingdom and just says like, hey, I'm murdering all of these people. They are going to go to Valhalla. Because I also didn't mention, but this guy's like the ability to use corpses to pretty much attack sort of in this moment. And eventually we see the Order comes through and pretty much cuts down this ice lich lord thing or whatever you call him. And hey, it looks like this. Order comes over, pretty much saves everybody here in the village or in the fortress. Everybody's so happy. And the fire spirit sort of like just comes off of this clad in like armor set that's on Order. And it's like, ah, look at this. It's been so long since I've been moved around. My name is Phlygia, and from here on out, I'll live and fight with you. Come on, it's time to fight. And like, hey, let's end an endless winter once and for all. And pretty much her and Order have this really nice little moment where they're just like talking with each other, right? And she just says like, hey, I'm pretty much like a newborn, pretty much, but like, hey, suddenly I was just burning inside of you, but I gotta know why. I've taken a liking to your warm heart. Those who seek death can't add any more kindling to their stones. Your heart was the warmest one on that battlefield, and I think that's all there is to it. So stick your chest out. You are a warrior who is chosen by a spirit, Order. And he pretty much falls to the ground and says like, hey, sounds like a line straight out of a saga. And that's where we end this first chapter of Order of the Flame. And hey, as far as what I remember that happened with Hunter's Guild Red Hood, these two series have had incredible beginnings. I love the beginning of this chapter going through, seeing this build up, and eventually see Order get this power and pretty much be able just to go through, beat all of these bad guys. It was honestly really satisfying seeing him be able to do this, but really, as I've also seen a lot of people saying online, it's really just going to be what Yuki Kawaguchi goes with the next few chapters of the series, and that's what's going to sort of understand if this series makes it or if it breaks it, pretty much. But either way, I know we went over this series for a long time, but I really just want to talk about it because it is like the big new series, and hey, I thought it was really good. Order of the Flame will definitely be placing high this week, right? But to get back to some of our sort of regularly scheduled program now, let's talk about what happened in Kagurabachi this week. Of course, this is a very simple chapter sort of going. I'm going to say simple. It's not really simple at all. Sometimes I could just have words on autopilot, but pretty much like, hey, a bunch of these various events are happening. We see that Hirohiko is pretty much ended up saved by both Kogiri and Todo here in this moment. We learn what Kogiri's sorcery is. It is a sorcery called Twilight Wave, where he's pretty much able to like to store heat energy, like kinetic energy inside of his body, Iori, and then unleash it as this big wave attack. And we see that, like, he's been storing up for 7 months to be able to unleash a wave this big. It's a really interesting thing of, like, hey, this is a very interesting power for a guy who's sort of, like, so hard-boiled on just fighting with a sword. I very much like this characterization that Hokuzono has given us, right? But pretty much we see that they all escape out of here. Pretty much Hirohiko is not looking too good after all of this very stuff, right? But Chihiro has a talk with Samura where Chihiro's like, hey, I know everything about the malediction, all of this various stuff. And pretty much just tell Samura, like, hey, I know you have a mission that you want to do, but your mission needs to be to protect Iori. That's what needs to happen. I'm not going to hear another word from you until you say that that is what you're going to do, pretty much, right? And he also just says, like, hey, here's the other thing that's going to happen here. I'm just going to stop you so you can protect Iori. Pretty much that's what we get there. We then get over to the Kabunabi HQ, as we see, like, whoa, this is pretty cool. We're seeing all this various stuff going on here, right? As we see that, of course, Yora and the Hatshaku are going through and trying to attack the Kabanagi headquarters. All of the leaders are having a little discussion about what to do. The leader of the Kabanagi pretty much says, like, hey, let them fight down here in the Kabanagi HQ area, because, like, hey, that way some civilians will be protected. I really like this as a good, nice, and noble move. And, of course, he pretty much just goes through, and eventually the end of the chapter is Izami pretty much saying, like, hey, let me go fight them, because, like, hey, looks like there's 7 of them here, the rest of the Hishaku members. And also one of the other Kabanagi leaders pretty much saying, like, hey, Hokuri, are you able to help us fight? And Hakuri's like, yeah, I'm at your service, sir. In a really cool moment of, like, hey, Hakuri's back. Honestly, I absolutely love it here, right? That's really all there is to this chapter of Kagurabachi. I thought it was an exceptionally good time, and yeah, just a solid chapter that I really have nothing else to say about that. Of course, if you want to hear my extended thoughts on Kagurabachi, I have like a 30-minute video up on the channel covering chapter number 78. But really a good chapter of Kagurabachi nonetheless, right? Next up is One Piece. This was honestly a very simple chapter, like, hey, Somers is getting ready to kill one of these children here in a moment, and hey, who doesn't want that to happen? It's Robin. So we see that Robin is coming over and being like, hey, don't you do that, and she ends up using a few of her, like, flower devil fruit, or what is it, her Hana no Mi, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much use it to sprout a bunch of hands on Somers, and pretty much knocks him off of a cliff. We also see that, like, she makes a clone of herself in the process. A little bit of an interesting thing. But before all this happens, Somers is just saying, like, hey, King Jirul, what are you going to do? Are you going to burn down the library or save one of these people, right? And the girl, who I think her name is Ronja, I don't have the chapter pulled up right now, but she just says, like, hey, I don't want you to harm me like this. Like, I don't want the city of Elbaf to be harmed. Just let me die here in a moment, and it'll be for the better prosperity. But of course, as we all knew was going to happen, King Jirul just says, like, no, start burning the library down, burn all of the knowledge just so we can protect some of the children here. And the very end of the chapter is all of this sort of getting ready to be put into motion, but oh no, look who it is! Scopper Gaban has appeared on the scene to pretty much cut an axe into Somers, and it doesn't look like Somers is doing pretty good, because he even notes sort of like, oh no, my arm was chopped off, why is it not regenerating? And it seems like that Scopper Gaban may be using some interesting type of hockey, maybe, not really so sure, but a way to pretty much nullify this sort of like demonic eldritch regeneration that of course all of the Holy Knights have. It's a fine chapter of One Piece. Of course, I'm not the biggest One Piece guy week to week, but I'm interested to see where all this will be going from here. One Piece was not bad by any means, though, right? Ichi the Witch is up next, and first off, hey, we got a good old color page this week. I really love how this color page looks also, because it's both Ichi and Gokuraku on it. And then the other general design of like this almost like green sky almost, or like almost like a pale green, like a pale white to like this sort of like deeper, like sort of like a light lime green almost. It's just very interesting, like sky, along with all of the red that's also portrayed in this color page. I absolutely love it. But this chapter is the 33rd hunt titled Fates Entwined, right? And we pretty much see what's going on here is like, hey, Gokuraku is getting ready to fight against Ichi, and it's going to be this little bit of a bigger battle here. And as Ichi is getting ready to be like, hey Gokuraku, me and you are going to face off, they're getting ready to do 2 punches towards each other, or Ichi has his hunting knife out, and Gokuraku has his fist getting ready to come down. Deskros comes in a way and sort of knocks the 2 of them away from each other. And she says like, hey Ichi, stay back, and Ichi's like, I'm sorry, my body just reacted, I almost felt like I had to fight him pretty much. But Deskros just explains like, hey, just you and your stupid bloodlust reactions, like, don't turn in like an idiot. Right now, he is clearly not insane. As we see behind Gokuraku, we see a few sort of orbs floating behind him, and they've all sort of like got these like weird webbing, like almost spindly attachments going from all of the various orbs into Gokuraku's back and his arms and all this various stuff, right? As we pretty much see, these are all these orbs of sorrow that the Joyous Sorrows magic is using here in a moment to pretty much control Gokuraku in this very evil way. And he pretty much explains like, hey, each orb you see here is 2 years worth. Of course, we see 5 orbs, which makes sense because it's like, hey, he had 10 years worth of sadness. As he pretty much explains like, hey, here is my acquisition trial. The first rule is that first, the challenger must bear the 10 full years of sorrow that I have accumulated. And second, should a challenger die before all 10 years have been born, they will fail the trial pretty much, right? And he says 3, should the trial be cleared, it'll be Ichi the witch who acquires the magic, which, oh, hey, of course, Gokuraku can't acquire the magic, and I was sort of wondering that, like, okay, if he's going to be doing the trial, is he going to learn magic also? But of course, I'm sure plenty of humans, or plenty of male humans have tried that in the past, and of course, that's not how this works, right? And he's like, hey, either way, the big assumption is that Ichi, you're alive to pretty much acquire me, right? As you pretty much see that he also uses this ability and says like, oh, hey, I'm going to pretty much chain your arm and Gokuraku's arm together. And like, hey, the two of you are the challenger. Your fates are literally bound together. So let's see some teamwork now, right? It's like, hey, now Ichi can't run away. It has to be Ichi versus Gokuraku here. Honestly, it's just really, really cool, right? And the Joyous Sorrows pretty much says, and like, hey, Descaros, in exchange, I prepared a more fitting opponent for you. As we see, it's the giant tapir who is going to be facing off against Descaros, right? And the tapir has all of these, like, big, weird eyes on it, and the Joyous Sorrow just says, like, hey, that is a nozzle right there. The moment you fail, its trial will awaken. When that tapir's countless eyes open, and the country's sorrow will gush back down to all of its people. Consider it a ticking time bomb. And Descaros isn't very happy about this, but we now just kind of wait to see the battle between both Gokuraku and Ichi going through here in this moment. Pretty much, it's not really looking too good for Ichi, but as it looks like Gokuraku is pretty much coming here in the moment, getting ready to punch Ichi in the face, Gokuraku is able to sort of like regain a little bit of consciousness and punches himself in the face, right? And he pretty much says like, hey, Ichi, heart, head, then stone, down my back, stab me anywhere, but, there, do what you gotta to beat me, pretty much, right? And like, hey, I leave this to you, and Ichi's like, alright then, you got it, we'll make this work out together, pretty much brandishing his knife, getting ready to get a bigger battle between both a crazed Gokuraku and Ichi. An amazing chapter of Ichi, to which, almost like everyone we've gotten so far, I absolutely love seeing the build-up we had in this chapter, going through, like, hey, here's how these two battles will pretty much be going on, and like, hey, it's sort of the Joyous Sorrows versus Ichi and Gokuraku, when it's really Gokuraku versus Ichi, and also Descaros' battle against the tapir. This is going to be absolutely awesome, and Ichi, to which was an amazing chapter this week. What can I say, right? Next up is Kill Blue chapter number 100. Look at that. And the whole big deal with this chapter is like, hey, of course, all of the higher-ups in the student council come over to say like, hey, whole Met Club, we've got to shut you down pretty much, right? Or they don't actually say that you have to shut it down, but it's more of one of these situations of, hey, Norin, we are going to have to pretty much not come to the whole Met Club class anymore. And if you want to stay after school, you have to stay with us, so it's harder to get Mitsuoka challenges pretty much inflicted in your name, pretty much, right? Because they are not a big fan of the Mitsuoka challenges, being that they're just like causing a whole lot of trouble for the general school, right? And that's when I think this chapter takes a little bit of a weird turn, because then we eventually get to the point where we're going to be having a challenge, an airsoft challenge actually, in between the student council presidents and the higher rankings people of the student council, whatever it's called. I guess it is just the student council. Yeah, it's just student council, and then Subaru is the actual president. But the whole idea here is like, okay, then to make this happen, let's have a challenge. Isn't the whole thing you guys want is to not make challenges happen? Whatever, it's just a little weird, like, okay then, I guess that's just how this sort of manga goes through and works, but either way, we didn't see that Subaru asked, like, Ogami, like, hey, can we have a little bit of more of an airsoft rematch? Ogami agrees, and the two of them fight, and Subaru pretty much says, like, hey, I'll let you know a little thing that the whole Met Club does, or not the whole Met Club, that Student Council does. We make sure no hitman can come to this school, and Ogami's like, no, I'm a hitman, this is really bad. And it's one of these things like, okay, Ogami, Sure, buddy, I guess you can't go full out on this big challenge, which means you're gonna have to train up all the other Home Ec Club people. Because if you, Sheen, or Kakeru get found out, oh no, that's not good at all. This was a very mixed bag chapter of Kill Baloo, because on one hand, I do like where the story's building up. We're going to have one of these bigger challenges, like, hey, an airsoft challenge, but at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, but isn't this just going against what the student council wants in these, like, big publicized events? I don't know, it's a fine chapter of Kill Baloo, but at the same time, it's like, okay, whatever. Hey, Sidcraft Loves a Mystery is up next. This is a Elio-focused chapter. As we see that, hey, Elio comes in from work. Oh no, I think the guy's name is Steve, who is her pretty much, like, personal attendant. Let me, go into the thing. Yes, his name is Steve. But we see this guy pretty much comes in and just is like, oh, hello, Master Sid, are you in? Is like, oh, Lady Elio, you're here too. And Sid's like, excuse me, Lady Elio? And he's like, oh, hey, weren't you with, like, Mrs. Ovine the other day? And we see that Steve pretty much explains all of it here in a moment. Says, like, hey, the person right in front of you is the daughter of Count Evelyn, Lady Elio Evelyn. Also, she's an author who writes under the pen name of Levine Olin, pretty much. Like, hey, explain one of the main core cruxes of this series, like, hey, this isn't who you thought it was, Sid. This is actually a woman. And sort of the bigger reveal here, Steve's like, hey, it was fun that you were playing, like, make pretend as a detective before, but, like, hey, now that your life is in danger in that big Zero Craft incident, or the X-Craft, whatever you want to call it, incident, I really can't allow you to be continuing to stay here and doing detective work when your life is legitimately in danger, right? And Sid is like, oh, so you're a girl and you're also the author, Miss Ovalin? He's sort of recontextualizing all of this stuff here in a moment. Of course, all the various times that he's met with Elio, right? And Elio is just like, no, what am I supposed to do? And Sid just says, like, hey, Mr. Steve is right. Elio, go home with him. Right, and Elio is like, hey, very sad and, like, very upset about all of this. She's crying in the back of, like, the carriage as she's being driven home. But oh no, some masked attacker comes through and cuts Steve in the leg. Oh no, Steve can't walk anymore. And pretty much goes through to abduct, who's her name? Elio here in a moment, and just is like, hey, by orders of Zero Craft, I will kill you. Oh no, why does Zero Craft want Elio dead so bad, right? As pretty much we just see this big sort of, like, event go through, and pretty much Steve says, like, hey, Elio, you run, you get out of here, don't need to protect me, pretty much, right? But of course, Elio just thinks, like, hey, I am going to be the one, if this is all going to happen, I'm going to protect Steve till the very end, do pretty much whatever I can. She's just like, stands in front of him just saying, like, hey, I won't run, no way, that's because I am the great detective Sid Craft's assistant, pretty much, right? And hey, oh no, this pretty much attacker guy gets in the way, goes, and, like, hey, Elio's able to knock the knife out of his hand, but hey, he just is like, oh, damn it, and he grabs Elio by the hairs. Elio grabs the knife here in a moment, right? He's like, hey, no more running for you. And Elio's sort of, like, here in a pickle, right? And we even see that Steve's like, oh no, you insolent fool, how dare you harm Lady Elio's hair, pretty much, right? But Elio just thinks, like, hey, I already have something more important than my hair. As we see that she goes through, grabs a knife, and cuts off her long hair, pretty much giving herself more of a bob haircut in this moment, as she grabs this guy and does a shoulder toss with this guy over her shoulder, slamming him into the ground, as Elio just thinks, hey, and my master has given me plenty of it. And that's where we end this chapter of Sid Craft Love is a Mystery. And legitimately, I really like this chapter. Granted, it sort of seems like a little fast in coming, like, oh no, why is all this development suddenly happening with Elio? And of course, that's because Sid Craft's first volume has come out, and it's not doing great. That's just to say right there. But of course, a lot of the editors want Taishi Tsutsuy's work to succeed. I mean, of course, he had a decently big hit before in the magazine of We Never Learn. So it's this bigger idea of, like, hey, Elio, of course, she wasn't looking very good in all of the harem stuff before, but now we may be getting a bit of a bigger deal of her. And of course, like, hey, we've got this bigger shift of her going through, cutting her hair here in a moment for this bigger idea of, like, hey, I'm going to continue staying with Sid Craft because that's what I believe in, doing the right thing. And I really do like this part of the chapter, and I really love seeing Elio being able to do her thing, and just, like, with the courageous that Sid Craft has given her, she's able to beat up this bad guy at the end of the day. I really liked it, and hey, I also do like Elio's new haircut. I do think it looks pretty nice, right? And it also sort of gets around the whole idea of, oh, hey, she's constantly got to hide her hair around Sid, because, like, hey, now her hair is just that natural length. I think this was a fine enough chapter of Sid Craft. Was it the best one ever? No, but was it the worst? Not either, right? Embers is up next, and pretty much we see, like, hey, the big match against Kurobayashi is starting by the end of this chapter, right? But the beginning parts of this chapter is really a decent enough of character development between both Yukizuki and Haitani, as pretty much we just see, like, hey, pretty much Yukizuki is pretty much like pushing all of the soccer team just to go beyond, really just go over their limits and like train a lot more than they ever should have to for the Kurobayashi match, right? And pretty much Haitani and Takami are like just completely out of it, of course, being like they are some of the best people on the team right now. And pretty much we see the Yukizuki's just like, hey, do you guys think you're done? We still have one drill left. Hey, what is this drill? They are all going to a bathhouse. And of course, hey, we get a bathhouse scene. Of course, we start with the guys first, as they're all pretty much going in there, and we see that Takami's like, is a bath really the final thing that we'll be doing here? But pretty much they say, like, hey, it's a big tradition that we have before big games. We work up a sweat together, then wash it off together. That's what it means to be a team. Hey, I do like all of this pretty much, right? But we also cut over to Haitani, who's pretty much just sitting in one of these tubs. And earlier, one of the vice captain of the team said to Haitani, like, hey, you and the, you and the coach are a lot alike together, right? And Haitani's really trying to understand what this means, right? As he even asks Bugai, but the vice president comes in and sort of just explains it. As he says, like, hey, you both are just incredibly competitive. That's just how it is, right? And when they lose, both of them cry. We then cut over to the female area of the bathhouse. Hey, we get to see both Hikage and Yukizuki doing all of their bathing stuff, right? But legitimately, it is some of the most tame stuff that I have seen in a Shonen Jump manga whenever it comes to bathhouse themes. Hey, I'm not complaining though, right? But pretty much we see the two of them talking with each other, and they're really just talking about, like, hey, how Yukizuki feels very strongly about coming through here and, like, winning all of these various championships, and, like, how she gets emotional over it sometimes, right? But the whole idea is that eventually Haitani is sort of sitting outside and just trying to think about all of this stuff over and over again, right? And Yukizuki sort of just comes on like, oh, hey, what are you moping around out here for, Haitani? And pretty much he just explains the whole idea of, like, hey, being alike and all of that. And pretty much he's like, oh, Bugai said all of that? Well, hey, everybody says they're in for more than just winning, right? He's like, hey, what about you, Haitani? And Haitani just thinks like, well, I mean, I just want to beat whoever's coming at me, and that's really just it. And he's like, I mean, if you get me, like, sort of brawling eventually became boring for me, and a part of me wonders if the same thing is going to be happening with soccer. It actually worries me a great deal. And Yukizuki's like, oh, so, like, you don't have a reason to want to win, pretty much, right? And she's like, oh, and also Haitani asked that to Yukizuki. And she's like, I mean, oh, like, why do you want to know? And Haitani says, like, hey, because I'm sort of curious about what got you so frustrated that you cry every year after everything's over. And Yukizuki just says, like, well, it's sort of the whole idea that I wish we could have had a longer summer together as a team. And that's really all there is to it. Because, of course, once they get knocked out, that's all there is to it, right? And Haitani's sort of thinking through all of this various stuff and really thinking about the chance that Oshimi-sensei gave him and his friends. And he just remembers that moment when, hey, that first initial match was over, and that was it for him, right? As he just says, like, hey, as Yukizuki gets up and just like, hey, anyway, it's getting chilly, I'm going to go back inside. And Haitani's like, hey, coach, this summer is going to be a long one. I will make it a long one. As we see that Yukizuki just sort of gives him a nice little smile as she goes inside, right? And sort of we get this whole idea of like, hey, it's getting time for the Kosei versus Kurobayashi match. In the past 5 years, there have been 5 games between these two and 5 Kosei losses, right? And Yukizuki just says like, hey, today we'll get our first win. Let's show them who we aren't who we were before, pretty much. We are better than that. And that's where we end this chapter of Embers. And yes, on one hand, I really do like the development we are getting here, but on the other hand, it's like, I also don't want to get too emotionally invested in this series because I know how the series has been ranking as much as I want it to keep going on. I also see the writing that's on the wall, and it's really this weird place to be in. Like, I want to see this series do so awesome, but are we really going to have time to get there? Sort of one of these things where I've sort of just got to almost cut my losses at a certain point, but I did think this was an absolutely amazing chapter of Embers. Next up is Star of Beethoven, and this was honestly a chapter that I really enjoyed for the way it sort of looks and approaches the creative process. Of course, this chapter is all pretty much focused on Amano, who last chapter we learned is pretty much this idol, or we really didn't, we got a hint to it, but of course this chapter is where we actually fully go through and learn that, right? As we see that Yasuo has been staying over at Amano's place pretty much is hey, he passed out in the streets and Amano sort of just carried him here, right? And she's treating him to breakfast and all this other stuff, and Yasuo's oh, hey, thank you very much, right? But eventually Amano just says hey, here's all this various stuff, here's how I got here and all of this. He asks hey, what's this jacket I'm wearing? And she just explains hey, it's some of my merch. I got you to change before you fell asleep at least, right? And Yasuo's oh, that's cool, so you've got merch, huh? Not a big surprise considering the popularity of a certain masked singer-songwriter is enjoying these days, right? As we get a little bit of a flashback to wherever Amano, who we see, whose name is Mazu, is sort of her pin name pretty much. It says hey, I'm Amano Suzumi, I am Mazu, right? As we apparently see oh, hey, look, Amano is AMA, and then Suzume has a zoo. Amazu, right? And that's her idol name, pretty much, or her song, whatever you want to call it, right? She pretty much just asked Ichiro, hey, I've got these new songs I'm sort of working on, and hey, I want you to perform some of these songs for me, and that's what sort of kicked up all of my popularity I have right now, is because I want you to play some of my music, right? And eventually, it's this little bit of a thing where Amano just says, hey, she learned that he doesn't want to play his music anymore, but they still had a nice relationship going from that point on, pretty much, right? But Amano just says, hey, think about all this stuff in the past, but right now, the time is finally right. As we pretty much just see hey, she wants Yasuo to pretty much play a secret track for her new album, right? And she's hey, I really want to do a raw live piano performance on the track that'll be the centerpiece of the album, and I want you, Ichiro, to be the one to perform it, right? And he's hey, but you're popular at a national level now, I'm not even close to being in your league, it doesn't really matter, right? We see that Amano's phone rings, and she's oh yes, I appreciate the call, thank you very much, my manager, right? And Ichiro's just hey, who is that? Are you having trouble with some deadlines or something? And Amano's just oh, I mean, the deadline's 1 week in the past, right? I love Amano, but eventually she pretty much explains that, and Ichiro sort of gets on her case about all of this, right? But Amano's hey, it's me after all. Do you have how many ideas of how many anime want me to do their theme songs? Hey, my videos rack up 10 million views on average. What does one little deadline matter, right? But we then cut to 1 week later. Ichiro is pretty much still just living with Amano here in the house. It's a little bit of a funny but weird thing, but we see that Amano is really freaking out trying to do all this sound work and just doing all of this, right? And she's really not looking good at all. And Ichiro's hey, can I get you some food? And she's can you get me stew? It's something I can eat without having to chew it. That would be absolutely amazing, right? But eventually, pretty much, we just see that Ichiro's just trying to help her out however she can, or however he can, as Amano isn't really looking good whatsoever, right? And Ichiro's hey, don't overdo it, get some rest already, you can't push yourself to the point of collapse constantly, hey, you're honestly sort of kind of scaring me. It's hey, how are you able to work so hard on all of this, right? And Amano just says hey, so, well, have you ever heard of Cheval's ideal place? And he's no, what are you talking about? And Amano just explains hey, back in 1879 in France, there was a mailman named Cheval who lived out in the boonies. And one day, he stumbled on an oddly shaped rock. Cheval's inspired by that rock, and from that day on, every day after work, he gathered rocks and stacked them in his backyard. And after 33 years, he built an entire palace out of them. He was regarded a lunatic, and people often made fun of him, but I don't think he regretted anything about his life. In my case, it was hearing you play that inspired me to compose my own ideal place. I realize some people never stumble over their own rock, and what lots of people who live out in their way do it by gathering rocks. But I wonder if your ideal place could be playing the piano. And he's just hey, Amano, I know you're pretty cool here in a moment. It's hey, how can I support you? Is there anything I can do to help your song move along any bit better? And Amano's like, oh, well, maybe if you like play some phrases for me, I can have you sort of like help me out and compose it here in a way. And he's like, yeah, I'll absolutely do that, right? And we see the two of them really just get working and doing all of this stuff here in the moment. And we get my favorite visual from this week in Shonen Jump, as we see a bunch of music notes stacked on top of each other, right? And we see Amano come over, grabbing a music note, and stacking it right on top of some of these other music notes in this, like, almost column line here. And he's like, oh yeah, that ought to do it. As we see that at the end of the day, she is fast asleep, the morning has arose, and hey, the file has been sent off to her publishers, as Ichiro just thinks like, oh, hey, really awesome job, Amano. So he just thinks like, hey, Amano is putting her entire life into all of her music. But what about me? Will I ever manage to face the music? As we cut back over to Beethoven, who is, of course, writing a brand new sonata here in the moment. This was a really amazing chapter, just going through, learning more about Amano, and just understanding this sort of contextualization, and understanding this whole idea of, like, this ideal place, a place that you love to be in. This was such an amazing chapter, such a good message. Star of Beethoven, you were absolutely excellent this week, and I honestly can't wait to see how Ichiro comes out the other side of this, is able to finally face Beethoven again, and sort of get back to this whole idea of like, hey, there's this big competition coming up, we're going to see how he sort of gets at it. I thought this was a brilliant chapter of Star of Beethoven. Nice Prison, I read it this week, I have no want or any idea to talk about it. I simply just know it was the worst chapter of the week. I am removing it from everything I'm reading in Shonen Jump now. I just don't find it funny at all. I didn't find it entertaining whatsoever. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. I didn't think this was a good chapter of Nice Prison, and I will never be reading or talking about Nice Prison probably ever again until the end of the year when I make the whole video like, hey, here's how I ranked all my manga in 2025 with all the big stats and numbers. I also sort of say that. I know I intended to do one for 2024, and I recorded that video, except it was really, really bad, so I just ended up completely scrapping it. I still have the file. Someday I may put it out or something, but at this point, we're already into, like, May of 2025, and I don't know if that video is ever going to see the light of day, but it sort of is what it is there. But Nice Prison, I didn't enjoy it whatsoever, and that sort of is what it is. I'll never be talking about it again. Let's go! Hematin is up next, of course. Next would be Order of the Flame, but hey, we actually skipped it to get to all this various stuff, right? But next up is Hematin, and really we just see the whole fall of all the various things going on between Sumire Terasaka, of course the new character we got introduced to last time, Iomori, and Himari, right? And really just sort of the boistery of this chapter. I did think it was a good chapter, but also I really rambled for a good long time about some of those other manga series. But pretty much, this whole chapter is Sumire pretty much just trying to go through and be like, hey, you're trying to court Himari, pretty much, Iomori, and Iomori's like, you know, you have all of this wrong, just get it into your head here, and Terasaka's not really listening to any of this, and eventually she's just like, oh, hey, like, how do you feel about him, Himari? And she sort of realizes that Himari may have a thing for Iomori, because, like, she's constantly going out of her way to try to talk to him, and Iomori's always being kind of like, hey, I'll help you out, and sort of all of these various facets and everything, and it's honestly a really nice chapter to seeing the two of them sort of working together, and Sumire pretty much being the person who is looking on here to all of this in the moment, right? And she, of course, is freaking out about all of this. We eventually see that the two of them, like, swap cell phone lines, pretty much like, hey, they've got a mode of contact. And, of course, this is, like, very, very overbearing for Sumire, who is like, hey, I am her number one fan, pretty much, right? Because, of course, she had the fan card of 00001. And it's sort of this really big whole deal. As eventually she ends up leaving the place, Iomori runs into her outside and is like, hey, Terasaka, what's wrong? And she's like, hey, shut up. I just had a fangirl overlord, right? And she even just says like, hey, Iomori, how are you not in love with her? That's absolutely bonkers, right? And he's like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Isn't that the exact opposite of something you were trying to tell me earlier, is not to get involved with her? It's a little bit of a funny joke at the end of the day, and I did enjoy Hematin this week. I thought it was just a plain old good time. Like, not the best chapter of the week, but also nowhere close to the worst. It was a perfectly great chapter, right? Ultimate Exodus Kyoshi was like, hey, of course, Sosuke just ended up beating the third demon lord, Kurose Sata. And of course, what comes next? Asura Wrath is here. And of course, the whole idea of like, hey, why Kyoshi ran away from the battle was like, hey, it ends up looking like that Kyoka Kurogane is going to be the one to face off against, loses face Asura Wrath, of course, until Kyoshi shows up. And that's really what this whole chapter is about, is, hey, look at this, we see Kyoka is trying to fight Asura Wrath. The two of them are going back and forth. We see that, Kyoka continues to use all of her Gong abilities, like, hey, Gong Girl, 128 toll, hey, Gong Girl, 64 toll. Of course, it is a sort of multiplying every sort of use on the number 2, pretty much like, hey, 128 toll, and then sort of going on, like, using another 128 toll, and eventually she's just sort of doing all of this stuff, getting to her final big power-up, where she pretty much just becomes, like, the White Tiger Celestial Wing Dragon armor, pretty much, right? Clothing herself in, like, this big, like, winged tiger armor, pretty much. A little bit of an interesting deal. Goes through to use an ultimate attack on Asura Wrath, but hey, Asura Wrath catches her fist in his mouth, bites down and almost shatters Kyoka's arm here in a moment, and Asura Wrath just is like, hey, unfortunately, I just can't fall for you, and like, hey, I'm not the kind of guy who cheat like that, so you aren't needed, and pretty much drops her off this really, really big building, right? And Kyoka just thinks like, hey, this isn't good. I thought I already shedded all of my tears long ago, but hey, I wanted you to meet you one last time, my prince on a white horse. Of course, thinking about Kyoshi. And hey, who would come in to save the day here in a moment, but then Kyoshi Horai himself, as pretty much he comes through, Asura Wrath sees him and like has this very blank expression, and then has this amazing full-toothed grin as he sees Kyoshi sort of rock down on the ground here in this moment, as pretty much Kyoshi's like, hey, you can rest now, Kyoka, leave it to me, as hey, Kyoshi has showed up for this big battle, and what an awesome moment it is. Like, of course, that's a logical progression going through this, is like, hey, oh no, it's not looking good for Kyoka here, oh no, and this is not good at all, but of course, who would come in to save the day at the end of the day, then none other than, of course, good old Kyoshi himself. Just a good chapter, and I really love the entrance that we got from Kyoshi. I did enjoy this chapter involvement X's Kyoshi for sure. Next up is Akane Banashi, and hey, this is honestly a very interesting chapter, because not only do we sort of see like the whole idea of, hey, Akane's going to have to do this big performance challenge without making the audience laugh, but of course, she's not very happy about any of this, right? And she's sort of sulking here in a moment. She just thinks like, hey, don't make them laugh, like that doesn't make any sense, and we just see, shows like, hey, oh, forget it then. I've lost interest. I have no time for frivolous games between you insignificant pups. Like, hey, when you said that I would admit I was wrong, I suppose that was all just talk from you. And Akane is not very happy about this sort of turn of events at all. As eventually she's just sort of sitting here thinking about all this stuff, thinking about like, hey, I was supposed to be having a rematch with both like Karashi and Hikaru, also all of this stuff with Shomei going on, and eventually she's just sitting here. Who else would walk through the doors than good old Kaichi? Of course, Kaichi is one of the members of the Arakawa School under, of course, Master Isho, and he's pretty much like, oh, hey, what are you doing here, Akane? Like, I don't know if you remember me, and Akane's like, oh, hey, I definitely remember you, and pretty much Kaichi's like, oh, well, I'd love to catch up on all of this, but I was sort of just doing a gig in the area, but hey, hate to bring this up, but think you'd be able to help me with something? And I love the sort of panel cut we get here, to where we see that Kaichi is dressed up in like this big mobster Yakuza attire, pretty much, right? Pretty much got like the full white suit jacket on, pretty much got like a nice little like timepiece thing underneath, and he pretty much has a gun in his hand, just says like, oh, your life is mine. Fires the gun and just sees like, oh no, he shoots somebody all of a sudden. This guy's gun goes out of his hand. Look at that. We see this is actually just a movie here in a moment. And of course, hey, it looks like Kaichi is doing all of this really big work. And we see that he invited Akane along to be an extra in this production. A little bit of a cool thing, right? And pretty much we get a little bit of an explanation. Is like, hey, first Kaichi sort of was on some news programs because like, hey, he's this older Rakugoka and he's got this really interesting story about him. And oh, hey, look at this. And the news people invited him back to do like other news story, to do like travel location pierces. And oh, look at that. Both him and Master Ikin started to go and work for TV dramas pretty much. And it's this really interesting thing where he's like, hey, but of course I'm still Rakugoka in the main, of course, and hey, I've gotten a lot better than the last time that you saw me, right? And really the whole idea of the rest of this chapter is Kaichi pretty much just telling Akane, like, hey, are you going to be satisfied with yourself and pretty much with all of this competition if you don't follow Master Ishiro's orders? Because, of course, like, hey, you have the option to not follow his orders, so it's not like his role is absolute. But what are you going to feel about all of this, Akane, right? And really the whole idea is Akane just thinking, like, hey, he is totally right. Fretting about whether or not I can do something is not me. He's like, hey, I am coming for all of it. It's time to lock in Akane Arakawa. And that's where we end this chapter, on this moment of her being like, hey, I am going to do this no matter what. None of you can stop me. And hey, I do like where we end off this chapter. It's like, hey, she thinks about both Karashi and Hikaru, Shomei, and of course, Master Isho, and like, hey, I'm coming for all of you. It's time to lock in. Absolutely love this chapter. And also like, hey, Kaichi's back in the story. Of course, we haven't seen him since the time skip, and it's good to see how he's doing. And hey, it looks like he has a really successful career. Hey, I'm really happy for him, right? Next up is Blue Box, and just like the nice little end of this sort of like romantic date between both Taiki and, Chinatu, that's what her name is. Pretty much we see like, hey, they're going to look for this bag, and as they're going around and looking for it, hey, they run into Ayami and her boyfriend. I forget what his name is right this second, but like, hey, they talk to each other in this nice little thing, and Ayami pretty much says like, hey, Taiki, you like how Chinatu looks? Well, Karin helped her out with all of this, got her all this makeup on, and got her all dolled up pretty much, right? Gave her this dress and everything that she's wearing right now. Hey, look at that, pretty neat, right? They then also run into Yumeka and Yumeka's boyfriend also here in the mall, and just have a nice little chat between them. And I love how both Yumeka's boyfriend and Taiki sort of have this little bit of a conversation of like, hey, all they talk about is basketball, right? A little bit of a cool thing, right? But, of course, both Taiki and Chinatu still haven't found this bag. And eventually, Chinatu sits down, like, oh no, she's got a blister on the back of her heel. Taiki runs down to get a band-aid, and oh no, some guys come over to speak with, what's her name, with Chinatu, pretty much like, hey, are you all by yourself? Like, hey, what's up, like, a little bit of a girl doing you here sitting alone? Hey, want to go out with one of us, pretty much, right? And, of course, Taiki sort of gets in the way, and this is like, hey, I'm her boyfriend. They mess with Taiki a little bit, but we also see it. Taiki eventually drives them away, and Chinatu is just very, very happy about all of this, right? Taiki helps her put on a band-aid onto her foot, and hey, whenever he's down here doing this, he spots the bag behind here, right? And the whole idea is like, oh, hey, whenever they were, helping that one child get reunited with his parents again, the whole idea is like, oh, they dropped the bag back then. Like, that's sort of just how it happened, right? And eventually they're just like, hey, okay, well, the day sure flew by, and we all see Chinatu's like, oh, hey, is your foot okay? And she's like, yeah, it is. And Taiki's like, hey, why don't we walk a little slower, right? Like, I want to spend more time with you. And Chinatu is like, oh, in that case, these are the keys to my apartment. I already got them, so why don't we stop by there together, right? They go out, and we see, oh, hey, this is Chinatu's new apartment. And Taiki's sort of looking around at it, and says like, hey, should we change your band-aid? And she's like, oh, no, my foot's okay. And pretty much she is sort of sitting on the floor and just invites Taiki over to sit with her, pretty much. And says like, hey, I want to be with you a little bit longer, so let's stay right here. And that's where we end this chapter of Blue Box, on this really nice moment of like, hey, I can't wait to see some nice stuff happen next chapter, right? I thought Blue Box was pretty good. The Elusive Samurai is like, hey, this big war is getting brought out right now, and hey, we're getting ready to get rid of the whole Kono clan. We get all three of the members of the Kono clans pretty much like, hey, here's their non-Bokucho tag. Honestly, I was really caught off guard because we see that, of course, the main one, what is his name, Koronao or whatever? I'm not going to open up the chapter and check. But we see that he cut his hair, which really, like, made me think it wasn't him for a grand majority of this chapter until we got like, oh, wait, no, it is the same guy, right? But, of course, hey, hair changes in this series isn't as big of a deal as it is in Sid Crafters. We're getting ready to get to Witch Watch, right? But this bigger battle is getting ready to go on, and the whole idea is like, oh, hey, they're getting ready to fight each other, and this doesn't look good for any of them. It's a chapter. It wasn't one of my favorite ones ever, but also, like, wasn't the worst Elusive Samurai chapter I've ever read. Like, hey, Akie's not in the story, so it's alright, right? And, of course, that leads us with one more chapter this week, of course, being none other than Witch Watch. This is chapter, what, number 201? Yeah, it's number 201. And, of course, the whole idea is like, hey, now Nico is 14 years old. And because of this, like, hey, she's in middle school and she's like a young girl, adult girl pretty much, right? And the whole idea is, of course, Morito is still in this big father mode, trying to be the best father he can be in all of these moments. And, of course, Nico is not very happy about any of this, right? Of course, she's made a brand new friend at school, and she's not very much into Morito being as much of, like, a father figure as he has been being for a grand majority of the time, where, hey, Nico was, like, 5 years old, now she's, like, 9 years older in, like, the span of, like, what is it, a few months or so? It's a little bit of a weird thing there. But we eventually see that Nico is talking with one of her friends named Marin, pretty much. And they're just speaking, doing all of this stuff on the phone. And pretty much, it's just this whole thing of like, hey, Nico has some of these feelings for Morito, but of course she doesn't know how to sort of go through and express all of them, right? And it's this little bit of a thing where like, oh, hey, Marin comes over to the house, the two of them go to hang out with each other. And Morito is just being this big, like, overbearing father, pretty much, right? And eventually the whole idea is like, oh, hey, I think your friend was a nice person that came over. And Nico sort of hears this and is like, oh, hey, that's pretty neat, right? And Nico sort of takes away from this, like, oh, if I want Morito like me, then I need to have short hair. And that's really the big whole thing of this chapter is like, oh, hey, Nico ended up cutting her hair. Oh, look at that. Her long hair is now cut. I did not expect this trope to happen twice this week in Jump, but hey, it did. And of course, this is a little bit of a weird moment. It's like, oh, hey, look at this, right? And that's pretty much where we end off this chapter. And honestly, yeah, this was about as weird as I thought it was going to be. I'm not really the biggest fan of this, but I will be interested to see where sort of Shinohara goes from here to sort of do all this other stuff. But hey, with all of that, that's all of the manga I read this week. So hey, let's go ahead and get all 15 of these series over and ranked. So, of course, let's just start at the bottom. Of course, as I mentioned, Nice Prison is going on the bottom, and I will never be thinking of it again. We're going to throw the Elusive Samurai right above it, and probably a Kill Blue right above that. Honestly, I'll probably going to put Witch Watch next, followed by a we're going to put One Piece. One Piece in this 2 spots above Witch Watch, and right underneath Witch Watch, we are probably going to throw Hima 10, because, like I said, Fine Chapter just wasn't one of my favorites by any means. Alright, so with all of that out of the way, we have Order of the Flame, Akane Banashi, Kagurabachi, Ichi the Witch, Star of Beethoven, Blue Box, Embers, Ultimate X's Koshi, and Sidcraft left. Honestly, we're probably going to bump up One Piece one more time to throw Embers right underneath it, if I can spell Embers. There we go. I forgot the second E in the word Embers, so throw it there. Oh gosh, what do I want to put next? I guess we'll put Ulti Exro Kiyoshi next. If I could also spell that correctly. Then we'll put Blue Box, and right above that we will put Sid Craft. Alright, so that leaves us with 5 series: Star of Beethoven, Ichi the Witch, Kagurabachi, Akane Banashi, and Order of the Flame. We are going to throw Akane Banashi next. Probably Kagurabachi right there, which means that our top 3 is going to be Ichi the Witch, Star of Beethoven, and Akane Banashi. Or not Akane Banashi, in Order of the Flame. We will throw Ichi the... No, we're going to put... Yeah, we'll put Ichi the Witch third. Ah, gosh, I don't know. Ichi the Witch third. I think first we're going to put Star of B-E-E, Teijo, Star of Beethoven there. And then, what was better? Ichi the Witch or Order of the Flame? Oh, gosh. I'm honestly very much lost here. What do I want to put where? Okay, I think, yeah, I really liked Order, and we're going to put Order third. We're going to put Ichi the Witch second, and Order of the Flame third. Order of the Flame right there. So that leaves us with the final rankings of Star of Beethoven, Ichi the Witch, Order of the Flame, Kagurabachi, Akane Banashi, Sidcraft, Love is a Mystery, Blue Box, Ultimate X's Koshi, One Piece, Embers, Hematin, Witch Watch, Kill Blue, Elusive Samurai, and Nice Prison. That is one heck of a ranking this week. We had some really good chapters, but of course, Who do I want to be the character of the week? I did really like Amano from Star of Beethoven. I feel like Order had a very good week, and I really like seeing him become the character he was. But honestly, I want to give it to Elio from Sidcraft. I just really like that moment going through, doing the whole thing of like, hey, I'm going to cut the hair here in a moment, but that's pretty much put this guy in his place. I just really liked how that chapter was pretty much done. So yeah, we're going to give it to Elio Evelyn. Let me spell that right. So Elyven. Is that how you spell it? Maybe. Let me just go back to the chapter real quick and check that. Of course, it said very earlier in the chapter. Evelyn. Oh, I definitely spelled that wrong. Evelyn. I had all the letters in there, just in the wrong combination. We're going to give it to Elio Evelyn from Sidcraft. I really liked how they pretty much showed their metal this week. I thought it was, hey, pretty cool. But yeah, with all that out of the way, thank you so very much for watching this video on Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 24 of 2025. If you did enjoy it, hey, I've got plenty of other Weekly Shonen Jump videos up on the channel. There'll be a playlist link down in the description box down below, and also on the end card of this YouTube video. And hey, if you guys didn't know, this is a show put up on YouTube. And the reason I say that is because, hey, this show is also put up on podcasting platforms. Just search up Let's Talk About Weekly Shonen Jump in your podcasting platform of choice, and it should hopefully be up on there so you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts online. And hey, if it's not on your service, let me know, and I'll try to be getting it there as soon as I can. But yeah, I think we had a really good issue of Weekly Shonen Jump. Of course, they gave it to Star, Beethoven, Ichi, the Witch, and Order of the Flame for my favorite chapters of the week. And yeah, with that, I'll catch you guys next time for issue number 25 of 2025. That's pretty neat. And yeah, I'll catch you guys then. This will be Glowplasma 231 signing out. I'll catch you guys next time. Great issue of Jump. What can I say?